The Karangal Valley stretched beneath the convoy like a wound carved into the Afghan mountains, and Elena Vasquez watched it pass through bulletproof glass while pretending to review her translation notes. 3 black SUVs moved in tight formation along the dirt road, close enough that she could count the dust particles settling on each hood, close enough that a single RPG could disable 2 vehicles simultaneously. She had mentioned this to no one. Her earpiece crackled with radio chatter from the lead vehicle, where Marcus Cole was running through checkpoint protocols with his team. His voice carried the particular confidence of a man who had done this route twice before without incident, which meant he believed he understood it. Elena understood that 2 successful runs meant the third was when patterns became predictable, when watchers finished their observations and made their plans. Cole's voice cut through her thoughts. "Bravo, team. We have the language girl in Vehicle 2. If anything goes sideways, she stays inside and keeps her head down." "Copy?" "Copy that," came the response from the rear vehicle. "Civilians stay buttoned up." Elena turned a page in her notebook, her expression never changing. The language girl. She had been called worse things during her 9 years in uniform, though none of those people had known they were speaking to a woman who could put a bullet through their eye socket from a kilometer away. Staff Sergeant Elena Vasquez, 75th Ranger Regiment, 47 confirmed kills, Silver Star recipient for actions in this very valley 6 years ago. But her file said Elena Vasquez, contract translator, Pashto and Dari specialist, civilian. Have you ever been underestimated? Have you ever sat in a room where people made assumptions about what you could do, what you knew, what you were capable of, and you had to stay silent because the truth was not yours to share? If you have, tell me where you are watching from right now, because this story is for you. The convoy approached a narrow pass between 2 ridge lines, and Elena felt her breathing change without conscious thought. Her eyes moved across the terrain the way a musician reads sheet music, finding the patterns that others missed. The rock formation on the left ridge offered perfect elevation for a shooter. The scrub brush on the right could conceal a dozen men. The road itself funneled traffic into a kill zone with no cover and no escape routes. She keyed her radio. "Mr. Cole, this is Vasquez in Vehicle 2. Recommend we consider the alternate route through the southern pass. This terrain presents significant exposure." Silence for a moment, then Cole's voice, patient in a way that meant he was not patient at all. "Ms. Vasquez, I appreciate the input, but route selection is a security decision. We have done threat assessments on every road in this sector. The southern pass adds 40 minutes and takes us through contested territory. This route is clear." Elena could have explained that contested territory was safer than predictable territory, that 40 extra minutes meant 40 minutes where no one knew exactly where they would be. She could have mentioned that she had run operations through this valley when Cole was still learning to field strip his rifle, that she had watched 3 friends die on a ridge 2 kilometers east of their current position because someone decided a shorter route was worth the risk. Instead, she said, "Understood," and returned her notebook. Specialist Rivera, the young man seated across from her, offered an apologetic smile. He was maybe 23, with the kind of face that still looked surprised when violence happened. "Do not mind Cole," he said. "He is good at his job, just does not like civilians in the mix." Elena returned the smile with one that did not reach her eyes. "I'm sure he knows what he is doing." Through the window, the ridgelines grew closer. The SUV's engine labored against the incline, slowing their speed, extending their time in the exposed section of road. Elena's hands rested on her notebook, but her mind was calculating distances, angles, fields of fire. The rock formation was now 600 meters to their left. If she had her M110, she could put rounds on that position before anyone up there could react. But she did not have her rifle. She had a notebook full of diplomatic talking points and a cover identity that required her to be helpless. Ambassador Williams sat in the front passenger seat, reviewing documents with the focus of a man who had no idea he was traveling through a potential kill zone. He was why she was here, officially. A diplomatic mission to provincial leaders required a translator who understood not just the language, but the cultural subtleties that could make or break negotiations. Elena spoke Pashto with an accent that placed her in Kandahar province, Dari with the formal inflections of educated Kabul. She had learned both languages during deployments that had never officially happened, in villages that had never officially been visited. The lead vehicle crested the rise and began descending into the pass. Elena watched the terrain open up around them, her pulse steady, her breathing controlled. Nothing moved on the ridgelines. No glint of glass, no shifting shadows. The rocks kept their secrets. She was overthinking. 6 years away from combat had made her see threats in every shadow. Cole was right. The route was clear. The mission was routine. She was a translator now, not a shooter, and translators did not spot ambushes from the backseat of diplomatic convoys. The thought had barely formed when the ridge on her left erupted in fire. The first RPG struck the lead vehicle before Elena heard the launch. The SUV lifted off the road like a toy swept by an angry child, rotating in the air with Ambassador Williams' security detail still inside, then crashed into the ravine 30 meters below. No one in that vehicle would be walking away. Elena was moving before the sound reached her ears, before the second explosion rocked the convoy, before Rivera beside her had time to understand what was happening. Her hand found the door handle while her eyes scanned the ridgelines, counting muzzle flashes. Left ridge, 14 shooters spread across 200 meters. Right ridge, at least 16 more, concentrated near the rock formation she had flagged 10 minutes ago. Coordinated fields of fire, interlocking coverage, no gaps in their kill zone. This was not an insurgent ambush. This was military precision. Automatic weapons fire raked the convoy from both sides, punching through the SUV's armor panels with rounds that should not have penetrated. Armor-piercing ammunition, Elena noted with clinical detachment. Someone had spent serious money equipping these fighters. The rear vehicle's windshield spiderwebbed and collapsed inward, and she heard screaming through the radio before the channel dissolved into static. Rivera was fumbling with his rifle, hands shaking, eyes too wide. Elena grabbed his shoulder and pulled him down below the window line as rounds stitched across the door where his head had been. "Stay low," she said, her voice carrying the calm of a woman who had done this before. "Do not return fire until you have a target. You will waste ammunition." He stared at her like she had spoken in tongues. She did not have time to explain that panic fire was how soldiers died, that discipline saved lives, that everything she was telling him contradicted the helpless civilian he believed her to be. Cole's voice broke through on the radio, ragged but controlled. "Contact, contact. All personnel to the rear vehicle. Rally point is the rear vehicle." His plan was wrong. The rear vehicle sat in the center of the crossfire, exposed to both ridge lines, already taking heavy damage. Moving there meant crossing open ground under fire from 30 shooters. Elena keyed her radio. Negative on the rear vehicle. Engine block of Vehicle 2 provides better cover. Consolidate here. The channel went silent for a moment. Then Cole's voice, sharp with authority and confusion. "Who the hell is this? Vasquez? Stay off the tactical channel and stay in the vehicle." Another burst of fire tore through the SUV's rear window. Ambassador Williams was on the floor now, covered by his remaining bodyguard, a man whose name Elena had never learned and who was bleeding from a gash across his forehead. The ambassador was whimpering, a sound that carried through the chaos like a wounded animal calling for help that would not come. Elena low-crawled across the seat, glass cutting her palms, and reached the far door. Through the shattered window, she could see Cole pinned behind the middle SUV's engine block, 2 of his men beside him, 2 more bodies in the dirt nearby. The team had started with 8 operators. She counted 4 still moving. She pushed open the door and dropped to the ground, rolling beneath the vehicle's chassis as rounds sparked off the road's surface inches from her face. The dirt smelled like copper and cordite, familiar scents that triggered muscle memories she had spent 2 years trying to forget. Her body remembered what to do even when her mind wanted to be somewhere else. Cole spotted her crawling toward his position. His face twisted through confusion into anger. "Vasquez, Get back in the vehicle. You're going to get yourself killed. Elena reached the engine block and pressed her back against the tire, assessing the tactical situation with eyes that saw everything Cole was missing. Your sniper, she said. Peterson. Where is he? Cole's expression flickered. Peterson is dead. First vehicle. Why would you need to know about our sniper? Because without Overwatch, you're losing this fight in the next 3 minutes. Elena pointed to the left ridge. Their coordinator is in that rock formation, 600 meters out. He is directing their fire. Every time your men try to move, he adjusts their shooters. Take him out, and they lose cohesion. Cole stared at her. The gunfire continued around them, a constant pressure that made conversation feel absurd. His eyes moved across her face, searching for something that would explain how a translator knew words like coordinator and Overwatch and cohesion. Lady, I do not know what you think you know, but this is not a classroom. Stay down and let us handle this. Another of his men took a round through the throat, the wet sound of it audible even over the gunfire. The man dropped without a sound, dead before he understood he had been hit. Cole's face went pale. That left 3 operators, plus Elena, plus a bleeding bodyguard and a terrified ambassador. The math was simple. They were outgunned 10-1 with no air support, no reinforcements, and no sniper to change the equation. Elena looked at the dead operator's rifle, an M110 semi-automatic sniper system, lying in the dirt 3 meters away. The weapon that had been her constant companion for 9 years. The tool she had used to save lives and take them across 4 deployments. The thing she had walked away from because she could not stand who she became when she held it. The coordinator on the ridge shifted position, exposing himself to direct another fire team. 600 meters. Mild crosswind from the east. Elevation differential of approximately 40 meters. Her mind performed the calculations automatically, without permission, the way a pianist's fingers find keys without conscious thought. She could make that shot. She could make it in her sleep. Cole was shouting into his radio, calling for extraction that would arrive too late, requesting air support that was 20 minutes away. His remaining men were conserving ammunition, returning fire in controlled bursts that accomplished nothing against entrenched positions. Elena watched another muzzle flash from the coordinator's position, watched another of Cole's men clutch a shoulder and drop behind cover. The ambush was methodical, patient, professional. These fighters knew they had time. They knew no help was coming. Her hand moved toward the fallen rifle without her permission. Elena's fingers closed around the M110 stock before her conscious mind could intervene. The weapon's weight was familiar, intimate, the way a recovered addict might recognize the feel of a syringe. She pulled it toward her through the dirt, keeping her body below the engine block's cover, and the rifle slid into her hands like it had been waiting for her. Cole saw her moving. Vasquez, what the hell are you doing? Put that weapon down. You're not qualified to handle military equipment. Elena ignored him. Her hands were already working, clearing the chamber with a smooth motion that spoke of 10,000 repetitions, checking the magazine, confirming 18 rounds remaining. She raised the scope to her eye and felt the world narrow to a circle of magnified clarity. The coordinator on the left ridge came into focus, a bearded man in mismatched camouflage directing his fighters with hand signals she recognized from her own training. 847 meters. Wind from the east at approximately 7 miles per hour. Temperature differential between the valley floor and the ridge creating subtle thermal currents. Her mind processed the variables the way other people process speech, automatically, without effort. Cole grabbed her shoulder. I said, put it down. You're going to get someone killed waving that thing around. Elena did not look away from scope. Sergeant First Class Cole, your team has approximately 90 seconds before a fire team flanks you from the east. She pointed without removing her eye from the glass. They're moving through that drainage ditch. For shooters, once they reach the rock cluster, they will have a clear angle on your position and the ambassador. Cole's grip loosened. His face cycled through emotions she did not have time to catalog. How do you know my exact rank? Because I read personnel files before I accept assignments. Elena shifted the rifle slightly, tracking the coordinator as he moved. Your sniper was Staff Sergeant Peterson, graduated from Fort Benning in 2019, qualified expert on the M110 and M2010. He was your only long-range asset, and now he is dead. The coordinator on that ridge is at bearing 073, range 847 meters. I'm taking the shot. You're a translator. Cole's voice had lost its authority, replaced by something that sounded almost like fear. Translators do not call range and bearing. Translators do not know about flanking maneuvers. Elena finally looked at him, and whatever he saw in her eyes made him release her shoulder and step back. This translator does, she said. Now get your men ready to move on the east position the moment I fire. You will have a 6-second window before they reacquire targets. She settled into her shooting position with the unconscious grace of someone who had spent years perfecting the posture. Her body remembered the angles, the pressure points, the way her bones needed to align to absorb recoil. The rifle stock pressed against her shoulder like a homecoming she had never wanted. Cole was staring at her hands. She knew what he was seeing. No tremor, no hesitation. The steady grip of someone who had held this weapon in circumstances far worse than this and never flinched. Who are you? He asked. Elena's finger moved to the trigger. Someone who is going to keep you alive, she said. Now shut up and let me work. The coordinator raised his arm to signal another fire team adjustment. Elena exhaled slowly, feeling her heartbeat in her fingertips, waiting for the pause between beats when her body was most still. The crosshairs settled on the man's center mass. She adjusted for wind, for distance, for the slight drop that gravity would impose over 800 meters of flight. She squeezed the trigger. The rifle spoke, and 847 meters away, the coordinator's chest exploded. He dropped behind the rock formation, and even at this distance, Elena could see the sudden confusion ripple through the fighters on the left ridge. Their coordinated fire became scattered, shooters looking for guidance that would never come. Elena was already shifting to her second target before the first body settled. A machine gunner on the right ridge had Cole's position pinned. 912 meters. She adjusted the scope, found him laying suppressive fire with a PCAM, and put a round through his shoulder. The machine gun went silent. Cole was shouting orders to his men, his voice carrying new energy now that someone had changed the equation. Move on the east flank. Go now, go now. The two remaining operators broke cover, sprinting toward the drainage ditch where the flanking team had been advancing. Elena tracked their movement through her peripheral vision while acquiring her third target. An RPG team on the left ridge, preparing to fire on the exposed operators. 300 meters of lateral movement between shots. Her scope found them, two men working together, one loading while the other aimed. She fired twice in rapid succession. The loader dropped first, then the shooter, the unfired RPG, clattering harmlessly against the rocks. Cole's voice reached her through the chaos. Vasquez, east flank is clear. For enemy down. Where did you learn to shoot like that? Elena did not answer. She was scanning the ridgelines, counting remaining threats, calculating angles and distances with the cold efficiency of a machine designed for one purpose. 14 shooters on the left ridge had become 11. 16 on the right had become 14. The odds were improving, but they were still outnumbered and outpositioned. Her fourth shot took a spotter who had been directing mortar fire. Her fifth eliminated a shooter who had drawn a bead on Rivera's position. Each pull of the trigger was a small death, a tiny piece of her soul she had promised herself she would never spend again. But promises made in peacetime rarely survive contact with war. The rifle's bolt locked back on an empty magazine. Elena dropped the spent mag and reached for a fresh one from the dead sniper's vest. Her movements automatic, mechanical. 18 more rounds. 18 more chances to save lives by taking them. Cole appeared beside her, his expression transformed from dismissal to something approaching awe. That is 6 confirmed kills in under 2 minutes, he said. Who the hell are you? Elena slammed the fresh magazine home and charged the rifle. Right now, I'm the only thing standing between your ambassador and a body bag, she said. Questions can wait. That flanking team was just the first wave. They have reinforcements coming from the south. I can hear the vehicles. Cole listened. He heard nothing but gunfire and wind. How can you possibly know that? Because I have done this before, Elena said, and raised a rifle to her eye. Now find your men hard cover. We have 4 minutes before this gets worse. The world through Elena's scope was a series of problems waiting to be solved. Each muzzle flash was a position to be marked. Each moving figure was a trajectory to be calculated. She had forgotten how simple everything became when she held a rifle, how the chaos of combat reduced itself to geometry and timing. Her 7th target was a fighter repositioning along the left ridge, trying to fill the gap left by the dead coordinator. He moved with the confidence of a man who believed he was beyond the reach of return fire, pausing behind a boulder to survey the kill zone below. Elena waited until he leaned out to signal his team, then put a round through his throat. He fell backward and did not move again. Rivera had crawled to a position near the engine block, his young face pale, but his hands steady on his rifle. He was watching Elena with an expression she recognized from her early days in the regiment, the look of someone witnessing something that rewrote their understanding of what was possible. She shifted her aim to the right ridge, where a 2-man team was setting up a mortar tube. Mortars would end this fight in seconds, dropping explosives directly onto their position with no possibility of escape. Elena found the loader first, a heavy-set man struggling with a round that looked too large for the tube. Her shot took him through the chest before he could complete the motion. The second man turned to run, and her follow-up round caught him between the shoulder blades. 9 confirmed. The ambush force had lost nearly a third of its strength in 4 minutes, and the organized assault was fracturing into scattered resistance. Fighters who had expected to slaughter a soft diplomatic target were now dying without ever seeing who killed them. Cole appeared at her elbow, keeping low, his earlier hostility replaced by urgent professionalism. "South Road," he said. "I see the dust signature you mentioned. 2 vehicles, maybe 3. How long do we have?" Elena glanced toward the southern approach without removing her eye from the scope. "For minutes until they reach effective range. Technical vehicles with mounted weapons, based on the signature. Probably a QRF element that was staged for cleanup." QRF. Quick Reaction Force. Cole repeated the military terminology like he was testing its weight on his tongue. "You're not a translator. You have never been a translator." Elena found another target, a fighter trying to drag his wounded comrade to cover. She let them go. Wounded men consumed resources and damaged morale. Dead men became martyrs. "I am an excellent translator," she said. "I speak 4 languages fluently and 2 more conversationally. I have a degree in linguistics from Georgetown. Everything in my file is true, and the parts that are not in your file, those parts are classified above your clearance level, Sergeant First Class." Elena fired again, dropping a shooter who had been lining up a shot on Rivera's position. The young specialist flinched at the sound, but held his ground. 10 confirmed. Focus on what matters right now. Get your wounded consolidated. The ambassador needs to be moved to harder cover before those vehicles arrive. Cole hesitated, clearly wanting to push further, then nodded and moved toward the rear vehicle, where Ambassador Williams was still sheltering with his bleeding bodyguard. Elena watched him go through her peripheral vision, then returned her full attention to the ridgelines. The fighters were adapting. They had stopped exposing themselves carelessly, now moving in short rushes between cover, never presenting a target for more than a second. Professional tactics. These are not farmers with rifles. Someone had trained them, equipped them, and sent them to kill an American ambassador with the expectation of success. Elena shifted position, moving 3 meters to her left before settling behind a new piece of cover. Standard sniper doctrine. Never fire twice from the same location. The fighters would be marking her muzzle flash, trying to pinpoint her position for a coordinated response. She found a new angle on the left ridge and waited. Patience was the sniper's greatest weapon, more valuable than any rifle or scope. The ability to remain still while others grew restless, to let targets come to you rather than hunting them. 30 seconds passed. A minute. Then a fighter's nerve broke, and he darted from behind a rock formation toward better cover. Elena's round caught him mid-stride, spinning him sideways before he crumpled into the dust. 11 confirmed. The sound of engines reached her ears now, growing louder from the south. The reinforcement vehicles were close, maybe 2 minutes out. She scanned the southern approach and found them through her scope. 2 technical trucks with heavy machine guns mounted in their beds, plus a canvas-covered transport that probably carried another squad of fighters. Rivera's voice came from nearby, tight with fear. Those machine guns will tear us apart. We do not have anything that can stop them at range. Elena did not respond immediately. She was calculating distances, angles, the time it would take the vehicles to reach effective firing range versus the time it would take her to engage them. The lead technical was 1,100 meters out, approaching at maybe 40 kilometers per hour. Its gunner was standing behind the mounted weapon, scanning the terrain ahead. 1,100 meters was a long shot with the M110, near the edge of its effective range. Wind was variable at that distance. The target was moving. A miss would alert them, give them time to take evasive action. Elena had made harder shots. Not many, but enough. She steadied her breathing, felt her heartbeat slow to a measured rhythm, and placed her crosshairs on the lead driver's silhouette behind the dusty windshield. The vehicle hit a bump in the road, and she waited for it to stabilize. Her finger tightened on the trigger by millimeters. The rifle bucked against her shoulder. 1,100 meters away, the lead technical swerved hard to the left as its driver slumped over the wheel. The vehicle careened off the road and rolled into the drainage ditch, throwing its gunner clear before coming to rest on its side. 12 confirmed. The second technical braked hard, its driver panicking at the sudden loss of the lead vehicle. Elena was already adjusting her aim. The gunner in the second truck swung his weapon toward the convoy's position, searching for the threat that had killed his comrade. Her second shot took him through the chest before he could fire. He collapsed over the mounted gun, and the technical reversed hard, trying to escape the kill zone it had just entered. 13 confirmed. The reinforcements had become casualties before firing a single round. Elena relocated again, sliding through the dust to a position behind the rear vehicle's wheel well. The surviving fighters on both ridges had gone quiet, conserving ammunition, regrouping after losses that had shattered their operational plan. She could feel them watching, waiting, trying to understand what had turned their ambush into a massacre. The transport truck that had accompanied the technicals sat motionless on the southern road, its occupants uncertain whether to advance or retreat. Elena counted 8 fighters dismounting from the rear, spreading into the terrain with more caution than their dead comrades had shown. These men understood they were facing something unexpected. Cole crawled to her position, keeping the vehicle between himself and the ridgelines. "Ambassador Williams is stable," he said. Martinez took a round through his vest, but nothing penetrated. "We have 3 effective shooters, including myself." 4, Elena corrected without looking at him. "Rivera is holding together." Cole glanced toward the young specialist, who was maintaining covert discipline despite the fear evident in every line of his body. He has never seen combat before today. Then today is his education. Elena scanned the transport truck's dismounts through her scope. They were moving well, using terrain, maintaining intervals. Someone had trained these men properly. "What is our extraction timeline?" "I called it in during your last reload. Nearest air support is 18 minutes out. Medevac is 22. Elena processed the numbers. 18 minutes was a lifetime in combat. The fighters from the transport truck would reach effective range in 6. The survivors on the ridges would coordinate a renewed assault once they realized the American sniper had to reload eventually. "Too long," she said. "We need to break there before air support arrives, or they will overrun this position." Cole studied her profile, the way her eye never left the scope, the absolute stillness of her hands. "In my 12 years, I have never seen shooting like yours," he said. "Not from anyone. Who trained you?" Elena found the transport truck squad leader through her scope, a tall man issuing orders with sharp hand gestures. "Fort Benning," she said. "Then some specialized programs that do not have names." She fired. The squad leader dropped, and the advancing fighters scattered into cover. 14 confirmed. Cole exhaled slowly. Rangers. Elena did not confirm or deny. She was already tracking her next target, a fighter who had taken cover behind a rock too small to hide his legs. Her round shattered his knee, and his scream echoed across the valley. She let him live. His cries would unnerve his comrades more than his silence. The ridgelines erupted with renewed fire, shooters trying to suppress her position while the transport truck's survivors advanced. Rounds cracked against the vehicle's armor, punched through the dirt around her, filled the air with the sharp whistle of near misses. Elena ignored it all. Panic was for people who had not learned to function inside chaos. She shifted her aim to the left ridge, where 3 fighters were attempting to reposition to a better angle. Her first shot took the lead man through the hip, spinning him into the path of the second. Both went down in a tangle of limbs. The third dove for cover, and Elena marked his position for later. 15 confirmed. 16 if the hip shot proved fatal. Rivera's rifle barked twice from his position, and Elena saw one of the transport truck fighters stumble and fall. The young specialist had found his nerve, was contributing to the fight instead of simply surviving it. Good. They would need every weapon working if the assault continued. Cole was on the radio, updating command on their situation, requesting expedited support. His voice carried the controlled urgency of a professional who understood how close they were to being overrun. Enemy strength estimated at 20 to 25 remaining. We have one asset who has eliminated approximately 16 hostiles. Repeat, one asset, 16 confirmed kills. The radio crackled with a response Elena could not hear. Cole's face went through an expression she could not read. Then he turned to look at her with new understanding. Command is asking for the asset's identification, he said. They want to know who is doing this. Elena fired again, dropping a fighter who had broken from cover on the right ridge. Tell them the translator got lucky. They're not going to believe that. Then tell them Staff Sergeant Elena Vasquez, 75th Ranger Regiment, sends her regards. She shifted aim and found another target. But tell them after we survive this. Cole relayed the information, and even through the gunfire Elena could hear the surprise in the response. Someone at command recognized her name. Someone remembered what she had done in this valley 6 years ago. The assault from the transport truck survivors had stalled, fighters pinned down by Elena's precision and unwilling to advance into her kill zone. The ridgelines had gone quiet again, shooters conserving ammunition and waiting for an opportunity that Elena refused to give them. 17 confirmed now. Maybe 18 if the man with the shattered knee had bled out. The ambush force had lost more than half its strength, and the remainder was learning the cost of underestimating their target. Elena allowed herself a moment to check her ammunition. 7 rounds remaining in the current magazine, 1 full magazine in reserve. 25 rounds to hold this position for another 14 minutes until air support arrived. The math was not favorable, but she had worked with worse odds. Movement on the southern road caught her attention. The transport truck was moving again, not advancing, but repositioning, its driver trying to find an angle that would let the mounted fighters provide covering fire. Elena tracked it through her scope, waiting for it to stop, waiting for the moment when still targets replaced moving ones. The truck halted behind a rock formation that blocked her line of sight to the cab. Smart. Someone over there was learning. But they had left the rear of the vehicle exposed, and through the canvas covering, she could see shadows moving, fighters preparing for another push. Elena smiled without humor. Learning was not the same as learned. She fired through the canvas. A body fell from the truck bed. 18 confirmed. The battlefield had found a new rhythm, a deadly patience that replaced the initial chaos. Elena watched the ridgelines through her scope while the surviving fighters watched her position, both sides calculating, neither willing to move first. 12 minutes until air support. 25 rounds. Approximately 20 enemies remaining. Cole had repositioned his men into a tighter perimeter around Ambassador Williams, creating overlapping fields of fire that would make any ground assault costly. The man was competent, Elena acknowledged. His initial mistakes had come from underestimating the threat, not from lack of training. Now that he understood what they faced, he was adapting. Rivera appeared at her flank, crawling through the dust with a water bottle extended. "Thought you might need this," he said. His voice had steadied since his first kill, the tremor replaced by something harder. Elena took the bottle without removing her eye from the scope. "Thank you, Specialist. Keep your head down. They are repositioning on the east ridge." Rivera glanced toward the ridge, seeing nothing but rocks and scrub. "How can you tell?" "Dust patterns. When men move through loose terrain, they disturb the surface layer. Watch for the slight discoloration against the shadows." Elena pointed with her free hand. "There, and there. 2 teams, 4 men each, trying to work around to a flanking position." Rivera squinted at the distant ridge. "I do not see anything. You will learn. If you survive today, you will learn to see everything." Elena found the lead element of the flanking team through her scope, a fighter moving with a low crouch of someone who believed he was invisible. She tracked him for 3 seconds, leading his movement, then fired. The fighter pitched forward and tumbled down the rocky slope. His partner froze, then scrambled for cover that did not exist on the exposed terrain. Elena's second shot caught him before he reached safety. 20 confirmed. The flanking attempt collapsed before it began, the remaining fighters retreating to their original positions. Cole's radio crackled with an update from command. Elena caught fragments of the transmission. Words like extraordinary and unprecedented and confirm identity. Someone in a comfortable office was having difficulty believing that a single shooter had dismantled a military-grade ambush. "Confirmed," Cole responded. "Staff Sergeant Vasquez, 75th Ranger Regiment, currently attached to diplomatic security as a linguistic specialist." He glanced at Elena. "They want to know your service number." Elena recited it from memory, a string of digits she had not spoken in 2 years. The radio went silent for a long moment, then erupted with new urgency. She could not hear the words, but she could read Cole's expression as he listened. Surprise, then something like reverence. He lowered the radio and stared at her. "Silver Star," he said. "Karangal Valley, 2019. 14 confirmed kills in a single engagement while providing overwatch for a compromised extraction. They thought you were dead. The report of my death was administratively convenient." Elena shifted her position slightly, maintaining her sight line on the east ridge. "I requested reassignment to non-combat roles. Translator certification gave me a reason to stay useful without staying lethal." Cole processed this information. "You walked away from the regiment. From that record. To translate documents. I walked away from who I became when I held a rifle." Elena's voice carried no emotion, but her hands tightened almost imperceptibly on the weapon. "Some people are built for this work. They compartmentalize, separate themselves from what they do. I never learned that skill. Every trigger pull cost me something I could not name. And now I have 19 confirmed kills in the last 20 minutes, and I will have more before this day ends." Elena found another target through her scope, a fighter who had raised his head to observe the American position. Her shot removed the top of his skull. 21 confirmed. "Ask me how I feel about that after the ambassador is safe." The transport truck was moving again, reversing down the southern road toward a position beyond her effective range. The driver had learned that advancing meant dying. But retreat meant abandoning the fighters still committed to the ridgelines, and Elena could see the hesitation in the vehicle's movements, stopping and starting as whoever commanded this operation weighed unacceptable options. She keyed her radio for the first time since taking a rifle. "Southern element is withdrawing. Recommend we allow them to retreat. Pursuit is not possible with current assets, and their departure reduces enemy strength by approximately 6 shooters." Cole relayed the assessment to command, received confirmation, and passed the word to his men. "Let the truck go. Focus on the ridge lines." Elena watched the transport truck complete its retreat, disappearing around a bend in the road with its surviving occupants. 6 fewer enemies. The mathematics of survival were improving, but the fighters on the ridge lines were not retreating. They had dug into their positions, committed to the fight despite losses that should have broken any rational force. Elena recognized the behavior. These men were not fighting for money or ideology. They were fighting because failure meant consequences worse than death. State-sponsored, she said to Cole. Iranian, most likely. Their handlers do not accept failure. Those men know that retreat means execution. How can you possibly know they are Iranian? Elena watched a fighter on the left ridge, checking his weapon. His movements precise and economical. Training signatures, she said. The way they move, communicate, set up their positions. These are not Afghan irregulars. Someone spent serious resources preparing this ambush. The armor-piercing rounds, the coordinated assault, the QRF staging. This was supposed to be a guaranteed kill on Ambassador Williams. Cole's face hardened. A state actor tried to assassinate an American ambassador, and they would have succeeded. Elena found another target, a fighter repositioning on the right ridge. Her shot dropped him before he reached his new cover. 22 confirmed. If your translator had actually been a translator, the irony was not lost on either of them. 8 minutes until air support. Elena counted her remaining ammunition again. 19 rounds. 14 enemies on the ridgelines. Maybe 15 if she had miscounted during the chaos. The mathematics had shifted in their favor, but mathematics meant nothing if the enemy decided to rush their position before the helicopters arrived. She studied the fighter positions through her scope, reading their body language across hundreds of meters of Afghan terrain. The left ridge had gone defensive. Shooters hunkered behind rocks with no apparent intention of advancing. But the right ridge was different. Movement patterns suggested coordination. Fighters communicating through hand signals she could partially intercept. They are planning something, she said to Cole. Right ridge. They have been repositioning for the last 3 minutes, consolidating their strength near the drainage channel. Cole scanned the ridge with binoculars. I count 8, maybe 9 shooters grouped within 50 meters of each other. That is too tight for a defensive position. They are massing for an assault. Elena tracked what appeared to be the senior fighter, a compact man with a gray beard who moved with the authority of command. He was issuing orders, pointing toward the American position, checking his watch. They know air support is coming. They're going to make one final push before it arrives. Can you stop them? Elena did the calculations. 9 targets, 19 rounds, 8 minutes. If they advanced in a coordinated wave, she could drop 4, maybe 5 before they closed to effective rifle range. Cole's remaining men could handle another 2 or 3. That left at least 1 or 2 reaching their position with automatic weapons and grenades. Not all of them, she said. Not if they commit everything at once. Cole's jaw tightened. Options. Elena considered the terrain, the enemy positions, the assets available. One option, she said. I relocate to an elevated position that gives me a better angle on their assault route. It means leaving the perimeter, exposing myself during movement. That is suicide. That is mathematics. Elena pointed to a rock formation 40 meters east of their position, a natural elevation that would provide clear sight lines across the entire valley floor. From there I can engage them during their descent from the ridge. They will be exposed, moving through open ground. I can break their assault before it reaches you. And if they spot you during your move, then Rivera inherits a very nice rifle. Elena checked her magazine, confirmed the round count, and met Cole's eyes. Your job is to protect the ambassador. My job is to make sure you can do your job. This is how I do it. Cole held her gaze for a long moment. Something passed between them, an understanding that transcended rank and protocol. He nodded once. Give them hell, Staff Sergeant. Elena was already moving, low crawling through the dust toward the rock formation. The 40 meters felt like 40 kilometers, every inch of progress bought with the knowledge that a single alert shooter could enter. She moved during the gaps between enemy observation, freezing when she sensed attention shifting her direction, advancing when the fighters focused elsewhere. 30 meters. A burst of gunfire from the left ridge kicked dirt near her position, but it was suppressive, not aimed. They knew someone was moving, but had not pinpointed her location. 20 meters. The graybeard commander on the right ridge raised his arm, preparing to signal the assault. Elena forced herself to keep crawling instead of stopping to engage. She needed the elevation. Without it, the angle would be wrong. 10 meters. The commander's arm dropped. Fighters began streaming down from the right ridge, 9 men moving in a staggered formation that minimized their exposure to any single firing position. They were good. They were professional. And they were about to die. Elena reached the rock formation and pulled herself into a prone shooting position, the rifle settling against her shoulder as naturally as breathing. The lead fighter was 400 meters out, descending the rocky slope at a controlled run. Behind him, 8 more spread across a 100-meter front, weapons ready, moving with the discipline of men who had done this before. She exhaled and began. First shot dropped the lead man, his body tumbling down the slope and disrupting the fighter behind him. Second shot took the disrupted fighter before he could recover. Third shot found a man on the far right flank who had broken into a sprint, thinking speed would save him. 22, 23, 24 confirmed. The assault wavered but did not break. The remaining 6 fighters accelerated, abandoning formation discipline for raw speed, trying to close the distance before Elena could reload. She tracked the fastest runner, a young man covering ground with desperate energy, and put a round through his chest. 25 confirmed. 5 targets. 15 rounds. The mathematics still favored her. She shifted aim to the gray-bearded commander, who had joined the assault and was directing his men while moving. A leader who led from the front. Elena respected that even as she centered her crosshairs on his torso. Her shot took him through the shoulder, spinning him sideways, but he stayed on his feet, still moving, still shouting orders. She fired again. This time he dropped and did not rise. 26 confirmed. 4 fighters remaining, now within 200 meters of the American perimeter. Cole's rifle barked twice, and one of them stumbled and fell. Rivera's weapon joined the chorus, rounds cracking past the advancing enemies. Elena found her next target, a heavy-set man carrying a P-cam machine gun that would devastate the American position if he got close enough to use it. She fired twice in rapid succession. The first round missed, deflected by a rock the man had ducked behind. The second caught him as he emerged, punching through his vest and dropping him onto the weapon he had hoped would turn the tide. 27 confirmed. 2 fighters left, both sprinting for cover near the convoy vehicles. They were close now, close enough that Elena could see their faces through her scope, close enough to recognize the fear and determination that drove them forward. She killed them both in the space of a heartbeat. 28, 29 confirmed. The right ridge fell silent. The assault had lasted less than 90 seconds. Elena stayed in her elevated position, scanning the left ridge through her scope while her heart rate slowly descended from combat tempo. The fighters there had watched their comrades die in the assault. 5 men remained, pressed flat against the rocks, unwilling to advance and unable to retreat. 6 minutes until air support. 10 rounds remaining. 5 enemies who had just witnessed 29 of their companions killed by a single shooter. The mathematics had finally decisively turned. Cole's voice came through her earpiece. Vasquez, status report. 29 confirmed. 5 hostiles remaining on the left ridge. They have gone static. No movement for the last 60 seconds. Copy that. We are consolidating wounded. Martinez needs surgery, but he is stable. Ambassador Williams is unharmed. Elena allowed herself a moment of something that was not quite relief. The ambassador was alive. The mission, such as it was, had succeeded. Everything else was aftermath. She watched the left ridge through her scope, tracking each of the 5 remaining fighters. They were young, she realized. Younger than Rivera, some of them. Boys sent to die by handlers who would never face the consequences of their decisions. Elena had killed men like them across 4 deployments, and the weight of it never diminished. One of the fighters shifted position, raising his head to peer toward the American perimeter. Elena placed her crosshairs on his forehead and held. She could take the shot. She could eliminate him before he processed what he was seeing. But he was not advancing, not threatening, not doing anything except trying to understand how his world had collapsed in the span of 15 minutes. She let him live. Movement, she reported to Cole. Left ridge, northern position. One fighter observing. No hostile action. Rules of engagement? Elena considered. They cannot reach us before air support arrives. If they stay defensive, we hold fire. No point spending ammunition on targets that pose no immediate threat. The response surprised her even as she spoke it. The Elena Vasquez of 6 years ago would have eliminated every threat regardless of immediate necessity. That woman had believed in clean battlefields, in absolute solutions, in the cold mathematics of survival that left no variables unresolved. Something had changed. She was not sure if that change made her weaker or stronger. The minutes crawled past. Elena maintained her overwatch position, scope moving in slow arcs across the left ridge, tracking each of the 5 survivors as they huddled behind their inadequate cover. None of them moved aggressively. None of them showed any intention of continuing the fight. They had been sent to kill an ambassador and capture a headline. Instead, they had found a ghost with a rifle and a willingness to use it. The psychological damage of that encounter would last longer than any physical wound. Cole appeared at the base of a rock formation, keeping low despite the apparent cessation of hostilities. Air support is 4 minutes out, he said. 2 Apache gunships and a Black Hawk for extraction. Command wants to know if you need the Apaches to clean up the ridge. Elena watched the 5 fighters through her scope. They had begun talking to each other, voices carrying faintly across the valley, the tones unmistakably fearful. No, she said. They're done. Let them go. Let them go. Cole's voice carried disbelief. They tried to kill an American ambassador. They killed 4 of my men, and I killed 29 of theirs. Elena finally lowered the rifle, turned to face Cole directly. Those 5 boys are going to walk back to whoever sent them and describe what happened here today. They're going to explain that 34 trained fighters with armor-piercing rounds and vehicle support were destroyed by a single American shooter. That story will spread. That fear will save lives on future convoys. Cole stared at her. You are thinking about psychological operations in the middle of a firefight. I am thinking about the next fight, and the one after that. Elena gestured toward the ridge. Dead men tell no stories. Terrified survivors tell stories that grow with every retelling. By next month, I will be 10 feet tall and bulletproof in every tea house from here to Tehran. The sound of rotors reached them from the east, faint but growing. The Apaches appeared over the ridgeline moments later, sleek and deadly, their weapons systems tracking across the terrain in search of targets. The Black Hawk followed, angling toward the convoy's position. Elena watched the 5 fighters on the left ridge scramble to their feet and run. They fled north, abandoning weapons and equipment, desperate to escape before the helicopters turned them into statistics. She tracked them through her scope until they disappeared over the ridge, then finally allowed the rifle to rest. It is over, Cole said. Elena looked at the weapon in her hands, at the dust and blood on her clothes, at the bodies scattered across the valley floor. 29 men dead because she had chosen to pick up a rifle instead of staying hidden. 29 families who would receive news that would destroy them. 29 lives ended by her decisions, her skills, her willingness to do what others could not. For now, she said. It is over for now. The Black Hawk touched down 50 meters from their position, its rotors kicking up a storm of dust that obscured the carnage surrounding them. Medics rushed toward the wounded, while door gunners maintained security on the silent ridgelines. Ambassador Williams emerged from cover, supported by a surviving bodyguard, his face carrying the shell-shocked expression of a man who had just learned how close he had come to death. Cole extended his hand toward Elena. Whatever you were before today, he said, you saved every life in this convoy. That matters. That has to matter. Elena took his hand. The grip was firm, professional, tinged with something that might have been gratitude or might have been awe. She felt neither. She felt only the familiar emptiness that followed combat, the hollow space where normal emotions should have lived. It matters, she agreed, but it does not make it easier. She walked toward the Black Hawk without looking back at the valley. Behind her, 29 bodies cooled in the Afghan sun, and 5 terrified survivors carried her legend toward an enemy that would learn to fear a name they did not yet know. The Black Hawk lifted off with Elena pressed against the bulkhead, the M110 still cradled across her lap. She had not released the weapon since the shooting stopped, her hands unwilling to surrender the familiar weight even though the fight was over. Across from her, Ambassador Williams sat between 2 medics who were checking his vitals despite his protest that he was uninjured. The ambassador's eyes found Elena through the cabin's dim interior. He studied her for a long moment, taking in the dust-covered translator who had become something else entirely over the past 20 minutes. When he spoke, his voice barely carried over the rotor noise. "Ms. Vasquez, or should I call you Staff Sergeant?" Elena meets his gaze. "Elena is fine, Mr. Ambassador." Williams shook his head slowly. "I have been in foreign service for 23 years. I have survived 2 embassy bombings, a kidnapping attempt in Beirut, and a car bomb in Baghdad. I thought I understood what security meant." He paused, searching for words. "I did not understand anything. You are alive. That is what security means. 29 men are dead because of me, because someone wanted to make a statement by killing an American ambassador." Williams' voice cracked slightly. "How do you carry that weight?" Elena looked down at the rifle in her hands. The question deserved an honest answer, and she found she had none to give. "I do not carry it well," she said finally. "I try to walk away from this life because the weight became too heavy. Today proved that walking away does not mean leaving it behind." The helicopter banked east toward Bagram, leaving the Karengal Valley and its scattered dead behind. Through the open door, Elena could see the terrain scrolling past, the same mountain she had fought through 6 years ago, the same valleys that had taken friends and pieces of herself she would never recover. Cole sat beside her, his shoulder pressed against hers in the cramped cabin. He had not spoken since they boarded, but his presence carried a solidarity that words would have diminished. They had survived something together that created bonds that did not require explanation. Rivera was across the cabin, staring at his hands with the 1,000-yard gaze of someone processing their first combat experience. He had killed at least 2 men during the fight, maybe 3. Elena remembered that look from her own reflection years ago when she had first learned what it meant to take a life. She leaned forward and touched his knee. "Specialist." Rivera looked up, his eyes struggling to focus. "What you did today took courage," Elena said. "You held your position. You protected your team. Remember that when the dreams start. Rivera swallowed. Does it get easier?" Elena considered lying, offering the comfortable fiction that time healed all wounds and experience dulled the sharp edges of memory. She decided he deserved better. "No," she said, "it does not get easier, but you learn to carry it. You learn to put it somewhere that does not poison everything else." "How long does that take?" "I will let you know when I figure it out." The helicopter cleared the mountain range and descended toward Bagram Airfield, the sprawling base appearing through the haze like a mirage of civilization. Military traffic crowded the airspace, helicopters and cargo planes moving with the organized chaos of a wartime hub. Elena watched the base grow larger through the open door and felt the familiar tension of returning from combat, the jarring transition from survival mode to something approximating normal. They touched down on a medical pad, where a team of trauma specialists waited with stretchers and equipment. Martinez was offloaded first, his wound stable but requiring immediate surgery. The ambassador followed, surrounded by security personnel who materialized from nowhere, escorting him toward a waiting convoy of armored vehicles. Williams paused at the helicopter's door and looked back at Elena. "I will make sure your actions today are recognized," he said, "whatever strings I need to pull." Elena shook her head. "I would prefer if my actions today remained classified, Mr. Ambassador. The translator who got lucky is a better story than the truth." Williams frowned. "You deserve recognition. A medal. Something. I have a medal." Elena touched the ribbon bar she was not wearing, the one that sat in a box in a storage unit in Virginia. "It did not make the nightmares stop. If you want to do something for me, Make sure Rivera gets proper support. He's going to need it. The ambassador nodded slowly, understanding passing between them. Then he was gone, swallowed by a security detail, leaving Elena alone with Cole and Rivera on the landing pad. Cole stood and stretched, his joints popping after hours of combat tension. Command want a full debrief in 2 hours, he said. They are sending a bird to take you to the operations center. Apparently, some very senior people want to hear your account firsthand. Elena finally released the M110, setting it carefully on the helicopter's deck. The weapon had saved lives today. It had also taken them. The duality was something she would never resolve. Who was asking for me? Cole checked his tablet. General Morrison, JSOC. Name ring a bell? Elena allowed herself a small smile, the first genuine expression she had shown since the ambush began. Morrison had been her commanding officer during her first deployment, had pinned the Silver Star on her chest, had tried to talk her out of leaving the regiment when she submitted her resignation. He's going to be angry, she said. He told me I could not run from who I am. I spent 2 years proving him wrong. Cole raised an eyebrow. Looks like he was right. Elena stood, brushing dust from her clothes, feeling the exhaustion settle into her bones now that the adrenaline had faded. He was right, she admitted. I just was not ready to hear it. She stepped off the helicopter onto the tarmac of Bagram Airfield, leaving the rifle behind, but carrying everything else with her. The operations center occupied a hardened bunker near Bagram's command complex, its walls lined with screens displaying real-time intelligence feeds from across the theater. Elena entered through a security checkpoint that required 3 separate credential verifications, her translator badge earning suspicious looks from guards who had clearly been briefed to expect someone else. General Morrison waited inside, standing before a wall's-eyes display showing satellite imagery of the Karangal Valley ambush site. He was older than she remembered, his hair grayer, his face carved with deeper lines, but his posture remained the rigid steel of a man who had spent 40 years refusing to bend. He turned as she entered, and his expression cycled through recognition, assessment, and something that might have been satisfaction. Staff Sergeant Vasquez, he said, "You look like hell." "It has been a long day, sir." Morrison gestured to a chair at the conference table. She remained standing. After a moment, he nodded, accepting her choice, and turned back to the satellite imagery. 29 confirmed kills in a single engagement. He traced his finger across the screen, marking the scattered positions of the bodies she had created. The analysts are still trying to reconstruct what happened. They keep telling me the engagement timeline is impossible. Elena studied the imagery, seeing the valley from a perspective she had not experienced during the fight. The positions made sense from above, the tactical geometry revealing itself in ways that had been invisible from ground level. "The timeline is accurate," she said. "I had good angles, and they made mistakes. They made the mistake of attacking a convoy with you on it." Morrison turned to face her. "I told you 2 years ago that you could not run from this. You told me I did not understand." "You did not understand, sir. You never had to learn how to live with what I can do." Elena met his gaze without flinching. "I did not leave because I was afraid of combat. I left because I was afraid of how easy it had become. Killing should not feel like mathematics." Morrison was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice had lost its command edge. "You think I do not understand that? You think 40 years of sending people to die has not taught me exactly what you are describing?" Elena had no response. She had always seen Morrison as a general, a symbol, an abstraction of command authority. It had never occurred to her that he might carry weights of his own. He moved to the conference table and activated a secondary display, pulling up personnel files and mission reports. "The ambush was Iranian-sponsored," he said. "Revolutionary Guard proxies operating with equipment that should not exist in this theater. Someone in Tehran authorized an assassination attempt on an American ambassador. I identified the training signatures during the engagement. Their tactics were too professional for local insurgents." Morrison nodded. "We intercepted communications an hour ago. Their handler is demanding answers about how 34 operators were neutralized by a diplomatic security detail." He pulled up an audio file. This is the response they received. Elena listened as a shaky voice spoke in Farsi, describing the ambush in fragmented sentences. A woman, the voice said. One woman with a rifle. She killed them from distances that should have been impossible. She moved like a ghost. We could not see her, could not find her, could not stop her. She let us live so we could tell you. Morrison paused the recording. That message has been relayed to Tehran. By tomorrow, it will be circulating through every proxy network in the region. He looked at Elena with something approaching pride. You did more than save an ambassador today. You created a legend. I created 29 corpses. Elena's voice was flat. The legend is incidental. The legend is strategic. Morrison leaned forward. Iranian proxies operate on confidence. They believe they can strike American targets without consequence because we're too slow, too bound by rules, too predictable. Today you proved them wrong in a way that cannot be explained away or minimized. One woman, one rifle, total annihilation. Elena understood the strategic calculus. She had made similar arguments to Cole about letting the survivors flee. But hearing it articulated by a general, reduced to talking points and regional influence, stripped something from the experience that she could not name. What happens now, sir? Morrison pulled up another file, this one marked with classification headers that exceeded her official clearance. Officially, today never happened. A diplomatic convoy was attacked by insurgents and defended itself with unexpected effectiveness. No names, no details, no records. And unofficially? Unofficially, I am offering you a choice. Morrison closed the file and met her eyes. You can return to translator duties. New identity, new assignment, same cover you have maintained for 2 years. Or you can come back. Come back to what? To the work you were born for. Morrison's voice carried no judgment, only recognition. You spent 2 years trying to be someone else, Elena. Today proved what we both already knew. You are a weapon. The most effective weapon I have ever commanded. The question is whether you want to be used. Elena stood motionless, the weight of the decision pressing against her chest. 2 years of building a new identity, a new purpose, a life that did not require her to calculate trajectories and eliminate threats. 2 years of believing she could be someone other than the woman who had just killed 29 men in 15 minutes. The answer should have been simple. It was not. I need time, she said, to process what happened today, to understand what it means. Morrison nodded. Take what you need. But Elena, he paused until she met his gaze. Did not take too long. The world does not stop creating threats because you need time to think. She left the operations center without responding, stepping into the Afghan night where stars burned cold and distant above a base that never slept. 3 weeks passed. Elena spent them in a transient quarters room at Bagram, officially on administrative leave, while the incident reports wound through classification channels. She did not contact Morrison. She did not request reassignment. She existed in a liminal space between who she had been and who she might become. The nightmares came, as she had known they would. 29 faces she had never clearly seen, reconstructed by her subconscious into vivid detail. The graybeard commander falling twice, once in reality and once each night in her dreams. The young fighters on the ridge, boys who might have been farmers or students in a different life, dying again and again behind her closed eyes. She ran 5 miles every morning before dawn, pushing her body until the physical exhaustion crowded out the mental noise. She cleaned weapons she did not own, borrowing rifles from the armory and field stripping them with mechanical precision. She read intelligence reports about Iranian proxy movements, tracking the ripples of her actions through regional networks. The legend had spread, as Morrison predicted. Intercepted communications referenced a female American sniper operating in the Korangal Valley, descriptions growing more elaborate with each retelling. Some versions claimed she had killed 50 men. Others described supernatural abilities, impossible shots, a ghost who could not be seen or stopped. The truth had become irrelevant, buried beneath layers of fear and mythology. Cole visited on the 8th day, finding her in the base gym working through her 3rd hour of training. He watched her complete a set of pull-ups before speaking. "You look like someone preparing for war," he said. Elena dropped from a bar, wiping sweat from her face. "I'm always preparing for war. The question is whether I want to fight it." Cole leaned against the wall, his posture casual, but his eyes serious. "Rivera asked about you. He is doing better. Got connected with a counselor who specializes in combat stress. He wanted me to tell you that your advice helped." I told him the truth. That is not the same as advice. Sometimes truth is the best advice. Cole paused. "Ambassador Williams has been making noise in Washington. Apparently, he wants to nominate you for something significant. Medal of Honor significant." Elena shook her head. "I already told him I prefer anonymity. He does not seem to care what you prefer." Cole smiled slightly. "Politicians harelido." But Morrison has been running interference. The official story remains intact. Translator got lucky. Security team performed admirably. Ambassador survived due to quick thinking and good fortune. Good. Elena retrieved her water bottle and drank deeply. "The last thing I need is my face on a recruitment poster." "What do you need?" The question hung in the air between them. Elena considered deflecting, offering a surface answer that would end the conversation. Instead, she found herself speaking honestly. "I need to understand why I'm good at this." She set down the bottle. "I have spent 2 years telling myself that killing was something that happened to me, not something I chose. Today proved that was a lie. When I picked up that rifle, I did not hesitate. I did not struggle. I became exactly who I was trained to be, and part of me was grateful for it." Cole nodded slowly. "You think that makes you a monster? I think it makes me dangerous." Elena met his eyes. "Monsters do not question what they are. I question it constantly. But the questioning does not stop me from pulling the trigger when the moment comes. Maybe that is exactly what makes you effective." Cole pushed off the wall and moved closer. "The people who do this work without questioning it burn out or break down. They lose perspective, start seeing enemies everywhere, become liabilities instead of assets. You question everything and still perform. That is not a weakness. That is the rarest kind of strength." Elena had not considered it from that angle. Her self-doubt had always felt like a flaw, a crack in the armor that would eventually shatter under pressure. The possibility that it might be a feature rather than a bug was disorienting. "Morrison made me an offer," she said. "Come back to operational work. Stop pretending to be something I am not." "What did you tell him?" "That I needed time." Cole studied her face. "And now? Have you decided?" Elena thought about the nightmares, the weight of 29 deaths, the hollow feeling that followed combat. She thought about Rivera's face when she told him the truth about carrying trauma, about Ambassador Williams alive, because she had chosen to act, about the 5 survivors carrying her legend toward an enemy that would think twice before attacking another convoy. She thought about the rifle in her hands, the clarity of the scope, the terrible simplicity of solving problems through precise application of violence. "I think," she said slowly, "that I have been asking the wrong question. I kept asking whether I wanted to be a killer. The right question is whether I can live with myself if I stop when I know what I am capable of preventing." Cole waited. 29 men died because I picked up a rifle. Elena's voice steadied as the decision crystallized. "But Ambassador Williams is alive. Martinez is recovering. Rivera is getting help. You and your remaining men went home to your families. Those 5 survivors will spread fear that saves lives I will never know about." She looked at Cole directly. "The mathematics are terrible, but they balance. So you're going back?" Elena nodded once. "I'm going back, but on my terms. No more pretending to be someone else. No more hiding behind translator credentials and hoping I never have to use what I know." She picked up her towel and headed for the door, pausing at the threshold. "Tell Rivera I said goodbye, and tell him that carrying the weight gets easier when you find something worth carrying it for." She left Cole standing in the gym and walked toward the operations center, toward Morrison, toward a future she had spent 2 years running from. General Morrison's office was smaller than Elena expected, a functional space without the flags and photographs that typically decorated command suites. He sat behind a metal desk covered in classified folders, his reading glasses perched on his nose, looking more like a tired professor than a man who commanded some of the most lethal operators on Earth. He looked up as she entered, removing the glasses and setting them aside. You made a decision. Elena stood at attention, a posture she had not assumed in 2 years. Yes, sir. At ease, Staff Sergeant. We are past formality at this point. Morrison gestured to a chair. She took it. Tell me what you want. I want to come back. Elena kept her voice level, but not to hide behind a cover identity. Not to pretend I am something other than what I am. I spent 2 years running for myself, and the Kringle proved that running does not work. Morrison leaned back, his expression unreadable. What exactly are you proposing? A hybrid role. Elena had spent the past 3 weeks constructing this answer. I maintain my linguistic capabilities, continue translation work where it serves operational needs. But I deploy as what I am. A ranger, a sniper, someone who can solve problems that other assets cannot. You want to be a translator who occasionally kills 30 people. I want to be useful in every way I am capable of being useful. Elena met his gaze. The ambush proved something I had been denying. My skills with languages and my skills with a rifle are not separate identities. They are aspects of the same person. Pretending otherwise nearly got an ambassador killed. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that surprised her. I have commanded thousands of operators over 4 decades. Sent them into situations that killed some and broke others. The ones who survive, truly survive, are the ones who find integration, who stop fighting what they are and learn to use all of it. He opened a drawer and retrieved a folder marked with her name. I had this prepared the day after the ambush, he said. I knew you would come back. The only question was whether you would come back whole or broken. Elena took the folder and opened it. Inside was a new assignment, a new unit designation, a role that did not exist in any standard military structure. The title read Linguistic Operations Specialist, but the operational parameters described something far more comprehensive. This is not a standard billet, she said. Nothing about you is standard, Staff Sergeant. Morrison allowed himself a slight smile. The unit is small, hand-picked, designed for situations where conventional approaches fail. You would operate under diplomatic cover when needed, direct action authority when required. The flexibility you are asking for, built into the structure. Elena read through the parameters, noting the chains of command, the deployment protocols, the rules of engagement that gave her latitude she had never possessed in the conventional regiment. This is everything I asked for. It is what you earned. Morrison stood and moved to the window, looking out at the base beyond. 29 confirmed kills in 15 minutes. A legend that has already changed Iranian calculus in the region. An ambassador who calls me weekly to ask how you're doing. He turned back to face her. You proved something in that valley, Elena. Not just to me. To yourself. She closed the folder and stood. When do I start? You already have. Morrison extended his hand. Welcome back to the regiment, Staff Sergeant Vasquez. Try not to disappear on me again. Elena shook his hand, feeling the weight of the commitment settle into her bones. I am not disappearing, sir. I'm finally showing up. She left the office with the folder tucked under her arm, walking through the corridors of Bugram with a clarity she had not felt in years. The nightmares would continue. The weight of 29 deaths would never fully lift. But she had found something in the Kringle Valley that 2 years of running had failed to provide. Purpose. Not the purpose of killing, but the purpose of protecting. Not the identity of a weapon, but the identity of a guardian who happened to be lethal. The distinction mattered more than she could articulate. Outside, the Afghan sun was setting over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that reminded her of muzzle flashes and tracer rounds. She stopped at the edge of the tarmac, watching the colors shift, feeling the dry wind against her face. Her phone buzzed with a message from Cole. Rivera made it through his first counseling session. Says he is thinking about extending his deployment. Wants to learn to be better. Thought you would want to know. Elena smiled, a genuine expression that felt foreign after weeks of numbness. She typed a response. Tell him that wanting to be better is the first step. The rest is just practice. She pocketed the phone and walked toward her quarters, toward the preparation that would consume the coming weeks, toward a future she had finally stopped fearing. Have you ever discovered that the thing you were running from was actually the thing that made you whole? Have you ever realized that your greatest burden was also your greatest gift? If you have, I hope you found the courage to stop running. I hope you found something worth carrying the weight for. Elena Vasquez had found hers. In a valley filled with death, she had discovered that the woman with the rifle and the woman who questioned everything were not enemies. They were partners, and together, they were going to save lives that would never know her name. The translator who got lucky. The legend that terrified an enemy nation. The ranger who came home. All of them were true. All of them were her.